Today is April 21st, 2023. Still going on, believe it or not, with everything, okay? Yesterday, on the 20th, I went up and sat outside Ravenna, or in Ravenna, outside a gas station. I know the guys that work the case in that bar across from uh, the courthouse, and they can hear me. And the police can hear me up there. So I go up and I give them testimonies of everything. And then about the extra victims, people scream. Nobody say a word to her. Okay. I go down to Maslin. I was going to buy my son Danny and his family dinner, but they were out. And I went and got Chinese for myself. I go get it. I go get back in my car, and one of those guys are there. And he said, I heard it was someone from your police department saying they were taping her before. He said, no, they didn't know anything about it. It was some guy running around saying he did it. And nobody knew who he was. And everybody feels bad. Nobody helped her up there. He said, well, nobody better say a word to her. Okay. Last Sunday, I had went to my daughter-in-law Jen's mom's memorial. I go to leave. My son Danny and Jen's out there with Jen's brother, and then my grandson Gabe and his girlfriend Shay. Well, the night before, I bought everybody dinner, and they had showed up. Well, I started talking about where they kicked in my door, and they're supposed to set up button cameras stalking everybody. I said somebody was messing with me big time. I had bruises everywhere. I was throwing up, and I almost passed out in front of the neighbor the next week after we moved up there trying to mow the lawn. He ran over and helped me. I said I could mow the lawn at Lennox like it was nothing. Jen's like, I didn't think about it before. I said, I looked at Jen and I said, you do realize if they have porn on me, they have porn on you using the bathroom. She's like, well, I hope I was Cassie. I said, you don't understand. They have porn of Dave and everybody else. And I said, and Shay's like, that's creepy. And I said, I showed her a picture of July 1st, and there's a man standing in the woods. And she said, Karen, this is creepy. I said, well, somebody was messing with me big time. I had bruises everywhere, throwing up, dizzy, and I wasn't sick till I moved up there. They said they were date rape drugging me and telling me say I was a weirdo, and they're supposed to have photoshopped a shower scene in the other room. And I said, and then they even confessed. They got high and came in and confessed. She's like, Karen, this is creepy. I said, I know it. Well, after the next day, after Jen's mom's memorial, I go to get out my car. My car's bugged from the case. Danny and Jen are out there talking with Gabe and his girlfriend and her brother, and said, uh, I heard what she said to Shay. None of this is funny. He said, I looked her up and they try to blame us for this, and we didn't know anything about it. Danny's like, well, I called Dad. And I asked Dad if he knew anything about it. He said he's supposed to have been some guy named Pete doing it. And he said he called Nick, and which is my nephew, Harold Stranger's grandson, the assistant pastor. See, Strange died like a week ago. And he said Nick told everybody in the church to stay out of this. None of this is funny. I got my car. My car's bugged. It can pick up 2 car parking lots away. FBI informant. And he said that Dad said that some investigator showed up and was asking everybody questions. They had not acknowledged Will telling on me. Now, Dave acknowledged that he knew some guy was stalking me and the whole family. He knew they were date rape drugging me, leaving marks on me. And he was human trafficking me, and he was watching the whole family obtaining and dispensing kiddie porn and selling it. And he knew I was getting beat under drugs and didn't know what was happening. That he was part of this whole shit. Police and agencies can only be in a home under a threat of life and have to speak to everyone before they start, or it's abuse and misconduct and it's illegal search and seizure. They can't even look at it. A retired Judge Pete with no authority cannot have his drug cartel break in your door while you're out on the 6th day. Break in and lie they have sodium pentothal reports and a date rape drug. You have men beat you under drug, leave marks on you. And admit he's doing that and then stalking you and your whole family. And then sharing it with his friends and family and obtaining and dispensing kiddie porn. And that they were selling videos of us naked and human trafficking me to that Steve under drugs. And he don't go to jail. And then Dave's going to say he was an accessory? Choose his words carefully. See, November 6, 22, I was at Trinity Gospel Temple with my client. And investigators come in and say, Kieran's okay anymore. We found the protective custody order. Then they start talking about the Ron Vega lying group. Where she was faking she was sick and faking she got well when I had fibromyalgia and had to work out for 9 months to get well. And it was a medication error making me swell. And they're playing everybody too. His kid's an RN nurse since 15, and fibromyalgia goes into spontaneous remission 80% of the time. It's a pain syndrome caused by a tragedy. I had 6 to 10 surgeries in 2 years, and then I went in pain management. They put me on 30 shots of steroids, gained 100 pounds, put me on high doses of ibuprofen. They even had me on quinine and a bunch of other drugs, alternative drugs, trying to cut the pain and muscle spasm. Well, I started swelling. Allergic reactions. You know where they put on the prescriptions these side effects can happen? They actually happen. My legs tripled in size. My knees were popping out of place from the fluid only. I was going to orthopedic doctors. They were pulling syringes of fluid out from my knees, put more steroids in. Swelling so bad my heart got off from all the medication. Was in the cardiac ward a couple times. My thyroid and adrenal gland from all the meds they were giving me was getting off. Joanne had came up to me and said, I know this doctor that treats pain with pain medication and it gets you out moving, you get better. Well, I'm desperate. I'm walking. They only gave me braces because my knees would pop out from the fluid. And they gave me canes to stable myself. I could walk around without canes or braces around my house and just lean against something. Or I'd fall. I was in my 20s and stubborn, get back up, crawled over to something, pull back up. And my feet I wear 7 to 7.5 shoes, and they were 8.5 wides. I had, where I had the 6 to 10 surgeries because I had endometriosis. Before that, I was fine, and all of a sudden I doubled over, I screamed, and Dave took me to the hospital. They did an emergency epidectomy, and the doctor said, well, it looks okay. But the way she's screaming, it had to be going bad, so I went ahead and took it out. I got a 4-inch scar on my stomach. Well, 2 months later, I'm screaming again. Same place. They go in, were you ever checked for cyst? I'm like, what cyst? Well, I was diagnosed with endometriosis, the fluid-filled cysts that grow inside you, and they were exploding. I got scars on my belly button on the outside. They would go in and try to repair them. I started burning treatments, different drugs causing kidney stones. Had to be knocked out, put stents up in my kidneys at different times, trying to keep it open, and I'm swelling, okay? And then the endometriosis was so bad with them bursting inside me, my uterus actually flipped over. It was like when you're in labor. My uterus would fill, when I had my monthly, fill full of blood, and it would gush out. And I would wear 3 pads, and it would go all over the floor. Well, it got so bad that they did a lower hysterectomy. Well, 2 months later, I'm in so much pain. Again, and the cysts are back in my ovaries. And I had one as big as a golf ball in one ovary. It's documented. And I had other cysts. So they cut me side to side, took out my ovaries. And then a few months later, my gallbladder went bad. And then I had a knot in my stomach. They went through my stomach again, and they removed some scar tissue that had clumped together. Well, I am in so much pain and I'm so sick. Well, one day I started bleeding. Well, I go to the hospital. My kidney tube had twisted and went back up from a kidney stone, and it was kinked. They had to cut me 4 inches on my back and cut out the damaged part of the kidney tube and then sew it back together. I got a 4-inch scar. By then, I am in so much pain. I've been cut front to back 6 to 10 times. I have scars everywhere. Okay. I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, where your muscles locked up from being hurt. I go up to Cleveland Clinic and they start me on steroid injections, 30 steroid injections once a month, up and down my back and neck. I gained 100 pounds. They started me on high doses of ibuprofen, quinine, and a bunch of other drugs, and I started swelling. My feet tripled in size, my legs tripled in size. I even had a fluid-filled cyst next to my one knee, and I started going to orthopedic doctors because my knees were popping out of place from the fluid. It's documented by them in an MRI report, all that fluid. And with all the different medications they were giving me, my thyroid stopped working, my adrenal gland, and my heart even got off, and I ended up in the cardiac ward a couple times. All right. Joanne came up to me and said, I know this doctor that treats you with pain medicine only, high doses, get you out moving and get better. Well, I'm desperate by that time. Okay. I go in, he said, I had a lady not quite as bad as you. In 9 months, she's running on a treadmill. I thought, you're crazy. I feel like I'm dying. And he said, you've been tight so long. If you try to exercise, it'll put them in more spasm. I want you to learn to relax. Just learn to relax, slowly move them. We'll get around to exercising. We've got plenty of time. And as you learn to move your muscles on a normal motion, he said, we'll start exercising them and then you'll get better. Fibromyalgia goes into spontaneous remission all the time, 80%. Okay? First month, he put me on fentanyl patches, Vicodin, and muscle relaxers. First month, I puked. He said, and we're going to get you off all those other drugs. Second month, where I had learned to move my muscles some, I could drive a car. It gave me freedom. I could go get my own groceries, pull myself around grocery stores, malls. Kids had a paper route. I could pull myself around the back allotments. By May 3rd, 2003, we were all working on our house, and there was a church baseball game, but the kids had to stay home to help us work on the house. Okay? Brian showed up and said Phil and Tyler had been killed. And I said, how? He said they were running late for the baseball game. Phil ran a stop sign, and a semi hit him. People behind him in church, from the church, were seeing it, and they were killed instantly. They tried to call Strange and tell him what happened, called him liar, called him names, and hung up on him, and they were too afraid to call Vega. And they had to wait for that bodies to get to the hospital to call him. He said it was horrible. They were pleading with him. They're called people, they're afraid of him. Okay? Well, 2 months later, I'm still working with this doctor. Been working, dragging myself around. I used to wear ankle bootlets, trying to hold my ankles straighter, because my feet were so numb. Okay? Still pulling myself around, thinking, when is this spontaneous remission supposed to happen? Okay? And I'd already lost 30 pounds working out. Okay? Minister shows up, he prays for me, he gives me a football lecture. I want you to fight through the pain, I want you to rebuke the pain, I want you to fight through it. Next day, I'm out on the paper route with just my canes trying to get balance. Nothing happened. Second day, nothing happened. Third day, nothing happened. Fourth day, something that natural, and it's 9 months of working with this doctor. The muscles finally got strong enough, all the pain left. My feet were still slightly numb, and I still fell for 2 more months. It took a lot of hard work, a lot of prayer, and a lot of dedication to get myself well again. All right. 4 months later, or 3 or 4 months later, Danny and Josh were acting out. They were going out with the Graber boys. They were in their 20s. They were cousins of Mike and Brandon, and their strangest step-grandsons that had money from the real dad dying in a factory accident. And they were buying my 14 and 16-year-old alcohol and getting drunk, and Josh would come home and tell them how they vandalized stuff and everything. And I'm like, you're grounded. This is great. It would freak him out so bad being 16. It was scaring him. And then Dave trying to show off for the minister would let him go back out, and I'd reground him. They will have a future. Well, Danny, it was October. Danny comes in one day. You're not my mother. I don't have to listen to you. I'm like, whoa, you're grounded. You're 14. You're going to smart off to me like that? He takes off. Josh comes upstairs and said, what on earth? And I said, well, get your stuff together. We'll go over his girlfriends. We go over to Heather's. Her mom, Joy's there in Brasilia. And they said, well, Danny's thinking about killing himself. I said, kill himself? He said they want him to help destroy people in the church, and he won't do it. And he said he'd rather die. Well, I'm freaking out. My 14-year-old's been acting out. And now he's talking to people about killing himself. We're driving up and down the road looking for him. And I see Strange's vehicle at the church. I tell Josh to stay out in the vehicle. I don't want him to know Danny's acting out until I find out what's going on with Danny. I step in the church. He pins me to the back door by my face. Confessed you were never sick. I said I wouldn't do that. He used to show up at the hospital and pray for me before the surgeries. He knew better. Everybody had been seeing me work out and everything else. And everybody's like, you're doing so much better. You're going to beat this. Everybody. Okay? I said I wouldn't do that. He said, you're a spoiled little brat. No one likes in this church. I said, well, you never did like me. He said, you'll be lucky you see your kid again. Now get off my property. And he's like, I said go. I walk out. I got a wallop on my face. Josh's mouth is, because it's a glass door and seen it. I go, Dave didn't always have these big jobs. I have him taking me up to Pizza Hut. He's like, I'll clock out. We'll go over there and find out what's going on with Danny. Instead, he goes over there by himself. And he comes home, he says, Strange says you're Satan and you can't go to church anymore. I said, why can't I go to church? And what do you mean when he's done with Danny? So I call my mom. Nick's my nephew, her grandson, because my sister Linda's married to Strange's kid, Tim. Okay? Calls Nick and says, you better give Danny back. He said, we'll give him back when you're done. What do you mean I'll give him back when I'm done? My mom wouldn't go back there because she's afraid they'd take her. Well, I get Danny back that night. He's shaking. He lied. I'm sorry. Well, the next morning, we get up, I hear the car start. I go outside, and it's Danny. He's 14, he's taking the car, and he's racing it towards a tree, and I'm running after him, screaming, and all of a sudden it veers off to the side, and he's slumped over and passed out in the front seat. I get the car home, and Danny. I go to use the bathroom, get something to drink, and I hear the dirt bike start up. I run outside, he's racing it towards a telephone pole. I'm running after him again, screaming. He looks back and he wrecks and gets all scuffed up. We ended up in the Child and Adolescent Center. Starr County social worker Georgine Vovusa. He told her Strange took him that day, screamed at him till he passed out and starved him all day. And he didn't remember half the day. He was diagnosed with post-traumatic syndrome. And I had to go out and, because Dave didn't have a good job. And no job with insurance, I had to go out and get a job with insurance so we could get counseling out, put on medication so we could afford it. Had to hire babysitters to sit with him. He became bulimic and got down to 118 pounds at 6 foot tall. He looked horrible. They started spiking my mom's tires with nails and sharp objects. She moved down to Illinois, and the Illinois authorities said that if she wouldn't have moved, they would have killed her. Georgine told me, he said, I wonder what Dave will do when Danny grows up. He tried to kill me. Now, one thing that had happened right before that, Katie had started coming back to church, and her sister, Trish, used to be a really good friend of mine. She'd say, she's so wild. She goes to bars. She gets mad at girls. She takes their husbands or their boyfriends out of the car and has sex with them. And then she gets in bar fights. She's crazy. I went with her. Well, Dave knew that, knew the stories of it. Let's just face it, Dave told me he couldn't leave his church. That man took his kid and assaulted his wife. Why wouldn't you leave your church? It was a stunt for Dave to cheat. He could have his girlfriend at church and his wife at home and kids till he decided what he wanted. I found out later, Strange told everybody I went in and confessed to adultery. He never even asked me, nor did I confess. He lied. It was a stunt for Dave to cheat and get me out of that church and his kids so he could have his freedom. Ron's kid is an RN nurse since 15. She knows fibromyalgia is a pain syndrome caused by a tragedy and that it does go into spontaneous remission 80% of the time. I was talking to a nurse about all the swelling. She said, it's probably a medication error. It's a good thing you got off all those drugs and got on pain medicine and got out moving because that's what was making you swell. And they didn't catch it. It was 20 years ago, but they still didn't catch it. It was probably the ibuprofen. I had been working at Wood Forest a couple years later, and we would stand anywhere from 8 to 10 hours, and my back was hurting. I asked Arlene if she had any Tylenol. She's like, I got ibuprofen. Well, I took it, and then I took some later. Well, the next morning, and I thought, well, that really helped. I'll go ahead and take it and buy myself some. Took some. You know what happened? My legs tripled in size. I go to the doctor. I'm like, what's wrong with me? They said, what have you been taking? I said, just ibuprofen. They said, well, that's what happens. Were you on it a long time? And I said, yeah. They said all those toxins from that sets up in your liver and your other organs, and your body can't flush it out. And after you take it so long, it causes allergic reaction. That's where later on a nurse said it was probably a drug. It had been a drug interaction, and they didn't catch it. It's a good thing you got off. They could have killed me. Because when I got off, I started going down. It took me a good 9 months for all the swelling to go down. Nothing to do with nothing. And Strange told everybody I was faking I was sick and faking I got well while Ron was grieving. They're all playing him. They knew it was for Dave to cheat. They all know it. They have been playing everybody for a long time. The retired Judge Pete with no authority and a drug cartel cannot kick in your door before you even move in. He can't kick in anybody's door. Set up button camera stalking you. Have his men break in date rape drug you so you're a human. There's over 300 date rape drugs that they can give you that you're a human zombie walking around doing and saying everything you're told for 4 to 6 hours and no memory. Beat you under amnesia drugs. Human traffic you. Stalk you and your whole family, and including the children in the bathroom, and dispense it among their family and friends. And then be in a drug cartel. He's part of the human trafficking group across the nation. Nothing, and then the drug dealers have come in and confessed that they photoshopped everything. The shower scene in the other room, they put clips together, they drugged me and told me say stuff. And that agent, we're at Memorial, Jen's mom's memorial outside, where I was talking to Shay the day before, Gabe's girlfriend. I said, somebody was really messing with me. I had bruises everywhere. I was throwing up, almost passing out. And someone kicked in my door, and I showed her a picture of somebody standing in the woods watching me. She said, Karen, that's creepy. I said, I know. And I said, I wasn't sick till I moved in that house. I could mow the lawn like it was nothing at Lennox. And I said, all of a sudden I started showing up with bruises. I'm throwing up. I'm almost passing out. I said, nobody knew what was wrong with me. I said, somebody was messing with me big time. And they're supposed to have been stalking, watching all of us. I said, Jen, you do realize if they have a shower scene in the other room, they have porn of you. She said, well, I hope I was gassing in the bathroom. I said, you don't understand. They have porn of everybody. They have porn of Dave, everybody. Okay? And this is the night before our memorial. And Shay's like, that's creepy. I said, I know. And I said, and I had marks and I was sick and I didn't know what was going on. And I lost all that weight. And I couldn't even keep anything down at times. I said, somebody was messing me with big time. They have admitted to a lot of federal crimes. And like I said, the drug dealers have admitted to photoshopping a shower scene and date rape drugging me and telling me say stuff under date rape drugs, where I'd be a human zombie. Nothing they have is admissible, but for their confession, they can go to federal prison. Police and agencies can only be in a home under a threat of life with statements. Like Officer Reinhardt said in Louisville, even the FBI can't be in your home outside to protect a live case with statements. We couldn't even look or listen. It'd be illegal to. A retired judge in a human trafficking group cannot, in his drug cartel, break in your house, date rape drug you, human traffic you, sex traffic your family, and videos of them being exposed in the bathroom, including kiddie porn to his friends and family, and to the drug cartel. And then the drug cartel laughing that they photoshopped shower scene and date rape drugged and told you to say weirdo stuff. February, and that agent couldn't go along with any of this. Well, after Jen's mom's memorial, I go to leave. My car's back from the FBI case. I go out to get my car, and Gabe and Shay walk up to Danny and Jen with her brother and said, none of this is funny. I heard what she said to Shay. And he said, I know. He said, I looked her up, and because I've been putting statements on my Facebook. And he said, they try to blame us for this, and we didn't know anything about it. He said, I called Dad. He said, Dad said it was some guy named Pete doing it to her. That means Dave knew, and he's an accessory to all those crimes, and they were violating me like that. And his children and his grandchildren. And he said he called Nick, and he told Nick, and Nick told everybody in the church to stay out of this. None of this is funny. It's life in federal, if not execution, for those people dying. Danny said that Dad said some investigator had showed up and was questioning everybody about the threats on her life. Told you, Will showed up at that church the night before I called him back. Can't ask someone to stay quiet while you investigate and threaten them when you're already told. It was verified by a police officer. They seen him tell on me before I called him back. November 6/22, Trinity Gospel Temple. They come in, Karen's okay anymore. We found the protective custody order because I called the FBI September 23rd, 18. And I couldn't call him back because it kept me drugged up for 4 days. And the night before, I had went and dropped off a card for Sarah asking her to witness for me where I had to call the hotline. And then we go up to Apostolic Church of Barberton. Paul Paymer got in Dave's face. My God, I had an FBI agent in my office. He's right there. How dare you bring the FBI up here with threats on her life? And I walk off and Dave comes in, let's go. You called the FBI on me? And he said, I had to kill you myself. I had to take care of myself, and swinging at me. He had a loaded gun between the console, and I kept putting my hand on it, kept knocking it off, threatened to kill me till I almost jumped out on the highway. Will almost cost me my life that night. I had to run from Dave when I got home. And then when I tried to tell him where that guy threatened to knife me at Huntington Bank on the 21st, and the Pizza Hut lady got paid to watch me, and the banker screaming at her, and they walked off together. Was there a camera above the bench? He knew I didn't know. Oh, there's cameras along the whole front of Giant Eagle. He could have got him. Is a serial killer for the Detroit boys. They ended up taking Marlisa's niece, the girl at the ATM, another 15-year-old kid. They had already killed my other co-worker's family and laughed in her face how they cut her into pieces and killed her. He let a serial killer go on purpose because I didn't know if there was a camera on the bench. You either say you're lying or I'll put you in jail. I'm like, I don't know. Then you better say it or else. Why would that be? I help a person like you. Well, these drug cartels after me. People are threatening my life. There's 2 Perry police reports of attempts on my life linked back to that church. Then witnesses of the other stuff. Now there's a guy, and I had made me beg for my life. Then I'll list you an informant. You have a life of peace as an informant. Um, Nothing legally dated against you again for working this case. It is for working the case. And no man will ever touch you. And only for you and only for you would we ever do this for. We'll always put it back to the traffic ticket, even when you tell. And I open an account with $5,000 a month in it for working this case. And when you move out, you'll have money to live on. You'll have that for life. But if you tell someone unless you're crazy, no one will help you. Failure to protect is abuse and misconduct. He can't put a gag order on me. He's not a sitting judge. The informant program's different from the basic witness protection program. Witness protection program, they write out a statement and they change their name and hide them. Informant program, they leave you in danger and you get them information and you feed it to them, and they can never, it takes a sitting judge to put a gag order on you. They can't tell you to stay quiet. They don't have, like some other agent last year tried to tell another informant they couldn't say anything. They got out of state and they put a gag order, they can't put a gag order on them. They're not a sitting judge. The agency don't have that kind of authority to tell anybody they can't stay quiet. They're only hire law enforcement. They better shut them down if they think they do. They're only hire cops. They don't have that kind of authority. They can't even insinuate you're staying quiet. They can't call you a liar. They can't make you say that you're lying under a threat of arrest and give a false statement. No, of course, confession is admissible. Badgering law, 1729. You have to take a victim or a witness or informant statement if you believe it or not and follow through. Or it's badgering. It's obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence, and tampering with witnesses. He let a serial killer get away. I told him about the What a Shame guy. Had people looking for him, grabbed the wrong guy at the Walmart. He yelled at me in front of people. I don't know anything about What a Shame. They said Will stole the money on the first day. I wonder how many other victims he fed to the criminals and stole their money. They still owe me it, and it's for life for working this case. You're like a civilian spy getting them information. They can never tell you to stay quiet. They can even insinuate it. They can't call you a liar. They can't bully you under a threat of arrest under false statements. And then listen, because then the informant thing would have been fraud. See, he knew I wasn't lying. I had all this crap on them. He had enough to arrest him the first day. And it was already verified by an officer November 6, 22. Karen's okay anymore. We found the protected custody order. I thought you should have just talked to the police. He said they were talking about the raw lying group. And they were talking about another group. Well, we told these men to stay out of this. None of this is funny. Well, the agent that called her back is the one that actually was verified by an officer. He told on her before, and he didn't, before she even called him back. And he didn't tell him on him before for telling on her. Oh my Lord, and they walk out. My client, we get home, he starts watching FBI files, protected custody cases. He sits up and smiles at me ear to ear. Karen, were you ever part of that? I'm like, that's a personal question. He started giggling. They have talked about the case in front of him. They have sold the login by Thanksgiving of 18, and it's a drug cartel. Human trafficking people. There was this one guy I was talking to through a dating app. Was out of state. At first I thought, who are you, and are you a setup for my ex-husband? And he was supposed to be a retired doctor from Italy. I thought, what do you want with me? You can have young and beautiful. Supposed to have had his wife die a few years ago. Really active in his church. I'd even ask him what they preached that day. And then he said he was doing real estate. And then it got weird. He said, I do real estate even in Muslim countries. And I deal with their ministries. I looked it up. You don't deal with ministries. You deal with realtors. That's like their presidents in Congress. They don't deal in trivial. Okay, then it's getting weird. Then he's like, I'm going to buy into an oil field. If you can afford to buy in an oil field, you can afford young and beautiful. What do you want with me? And he said he was going to go down to Venezuela and get oil. and buy into an oil tanker. He starts sending me documents of how he's dealing with this one known terrorist. I looked him up and he's wanted by our government for $100 million. And then he shows me proof of like $80,000 coming out of his account. And I turned him in. Oh, I did. I turned him in. If he's a scammer, they're going to get him. And if he's dealing with that terrorist, because it's linked back to Al Qaeda that took down our towers. I was talking to him, and some lady on the phone. Hi, Karen. It's funny what's going on. It's funny she doesn't know. Phone went blank. They got on there. Hi, darling. How are you? I said, when do you leave and what airplane are you leaving on? So then I told everybody. Last time I talked, I'm like, where are you shipping the oil? When are you coming back? 80,000 will not buy into an oil field or oil tanker, but it will buy a drug shipment. Last I heard, they shut off his credit cards and he was stuck in Venezuela. So even if he's a scammer, but if not, he's in with a drug deal. And if he's in with that terrorist group, they're trying to take over our nation of running these drug scams and human trafficking people. I already told the feds on them, several different agencies. Another guy in the park today ran by with an Italian accent. Karen's will found out what's going on. Nobody better say a word to her. I went down to Walmart. Some guy sitting in a vehicle. I'm giving statement after statement after statement. He finally left. Other people said they left to come over there. We'll take care of it. There's a video of 12/21/18 where the case started. Some guy showed up, and Alex showed up, retired Judge Pete. Some guy said he's a big Karen fan. He likes to watch her and Dave make love for hours. That's all he does is sit and watch Karen. Do you know what happened on 12/21/18? I got a shower. It should be 12/21/18 in protective custody. I go get a house coat on, open the refrigerator. Someone stabs me in the neck. Foggy, hazy, dark, bright light, felt myself cry. Woke up 6 hours later in bed. I have a dent in my head. I have marks everywhere, and there's another man's comb. It's white on Dave's dresser. He shows up. You had an affair. I don't know what happened. My head is killing me. I got marks all over me. I had been jumped at the refrigerator. I didn't know what happened. They said that Alex and his group raped me, where he sat and watched me and Dave. He couldn't take it anymore. Him and his group broke in, bashed me in the skull, beat me, and he raped me. Left his comb on Dave's dresser. My daughter-in-law Dixie seen him in Wendy's and other places. Darlene seen him and John seen him. He's retired Judge Pete's son. I didn't know who he was. He was showing up when they were harassing me. First week of January 19, he's in Bob Evan. The one guy looked at him and said, "You idiot, you left your comb over there." Well, I had almost a naked lady laying next to me like, "You don't come here." They said he raped me. May or June of 19, I had a pair of jeans on. I'm down at the laundromat. He's one of the big truck guys, slammed on the brake and said, "Hey, Alex, there she is." He said, "My girlfriend has a nice ass. You're lucky. It's great to have a girlfriend. You don't have to do anything for her." He was a stalker brigand. He was hurting me. 9/18/19, the day of my divorce, retired Judge Pete had been following me around. Looks like a little white Santa Claus. His picture's on the wall. He's in the back joking around with Judge Timothy Ludick. Spitting image of Alex with a beard. They say it's his son. They tried to blame the Portage County Sheriff's. I went up there and talked to him in a recorded room and said that they said it was them in my house. Miss Hall, what these people are saying they did is illegal. It was none of our officers in your home or anybody else's home outside of Protect a Life case. I said, with statements, yes. It's the Fourth Amendment, yes. I said, you couldn't look or listen, yes. And nor did we have knowledge of what these people are saying they did, and what they did is illegal. I said, you couldn't look or listen, yes. And I told them about the shower scene, having marks, getting sick, that they were breaking, they date raped, drugged me, and told me to say I was weirdo and put a shower scene in the other room. Lady sheriff's behind the door. Now, this is funny. Somebody actually needs to look into this. He said it was none of us, nor did we have any knowledge of it. I went up outside Ravenna, sat at that gas station yesterday, and I know the people that help work the case are up there. And somebody yelled out, "No one say anything to her again." I went down to Maslin to buy Danny and his family dinner again, and they weren't home, so I bought myself Chinese, and one of the guys are out there said, "I heard it was one of the people in your police department saying they taped her before." Said, "No, we had no knowledge." And it was some guy right around saying he did it, and we didn't know who was doing it, and everybody feels bad. Nobody helped her up there. See, but that agent opened a real case, had a cop talk to Dave the next day, and the Canton police called him an officer to open up. He had to still ask him about about the threats on my life. He showed up at Walmart. I asked Dave about those people threatening her, and Canton police called him an officer. He's in the back of CSE Bank, and he was in Liberty House in June of 19, and then also in October of 19 and into 20 in the back of CSE Bank. And they call him an officer. And he had to go ask Dave about the threats on my life, or my protected custody. Police and agencies can only be in a home under a threat of life with statements of knowledge of threats. Like Officer Reinhardt, he said a government official was worried about me, sent him over to talk to me, and said they were worried. I told them about them kicking my door. I had bruises, and they were supposed to have date raped, drugged me, and told me to say I was a weirdo and photoshopped a shower scene. He started giggling. He said even the FBI couldn't be in your home outside to protect a live case with statements. They go to jail. You don't realize how illegal it is to be in somebody's home. We could never even look or listen. I looked it up. It is. Police and agencies can only be in a home under a threat of life with statements. Otherwise, it's abuse and misconduct and illegal search and seizure, and they go to jail for 2 to 20 years, and they can never look or listen. And it sure as heck can't be a retired judge and a drug cartel doing it to you. And they can't even look at it. And they have the church people nailed. And the drug dealers have got high and confessed it was all them and not me, and it was done for people to turn on me. They admitted to a shower scene in the other room. They have admitted to drugging me and telling me say whatever it is. They sold the login to the protected custody case by Thanksgiving of 18. February 2nd, 22 was a fiasco day. Some other guy that was Latino descent was in there with a girl with black hair and spirals in her hair in front of my client. She said, "I see her out today. It's not funny what's going on." I know. I wish I wouldn't have drugged her first and told her to say it. I regret it. I got my client away from him. We go in to Save a Lot. People come running in. Oh my goodness, they met a drugger and tell her to say it before. We were on 6th Street. People ran out later on, and they run out of their houses yelling at Postman. Postman's like, "We all heard him admit to drugging her and tell her to say it before." This car that was involved from Ravenna came down and said, "I'm not interested in saying anything to her," before I found out that bastard really did drug her and tell her to say it before. See, they all know I'm drugged, photoshopped, and everything on me by the drug cartel. And a retired judge with no authority, stalking people in a human trafficking group. That agent better choose his words carefully. He left me up there to die and told on me the night before I called him back, and opened up that case and let that cartel abuse the hell out of me in protected custody. And the one guy I went out to eat with and said the other police departments are using the case to grab those people. They're not releasing. They found 35 people tied up and gagged in a railroad car they grabbed. He said they knew about the Texas group in your case. I said, "Oh, the Kingsmen." He said, "Is that why they call themselves?" He said they went down to talk to the retired Texas judge in this big human trafficking scam. He killed himself. There's another judge in another state involved, and they're trying to grab him. A month later, they did an 800 people sweep. That agent could have grabbed 200 drug traders and human traffickers the first month. The serial killers were right down the way from me in the local bars. And he could have solved a murder of one of my co-workers' family members. They had already killed her and they tied her up and cut her in pieces and laughed in her face. They grabbed my house manager niece After the case started, they grabbed the girl at the ATM that her and her friends used to follow me around. They grabbed a 15-year-old kid. They tried to grab my DM, Kara. People are dead because of this. That agent has a lot of explaining to do. And for me working this case, the FBI owes me $377,000. They said Will stole it on the first day. I wonder how many other people he has put them in the informant program, fed them to the enemies, and stole their money. And then sold police information. I'm going to go ahead and upload this.